No bonus for the old guard, Carson Vickery said, sliding a manila envelope across the glass conference table like he was dealing cards. Rain pelted the windows, tapping a relentless rhythm that made his voice even colder. I'm Leonard Abrams, 60 years old, and I'd spent 27 years at Iron Ridge Components. 11 days shy of my $94,000 retirement bonus, and here I was, being told by a man half my age that my time was up. We're restructuring, he continued, adjusting his designer glasses. Sign the severance by Friday, or you get nothing. I looked down at the packet, standard termination forms, a modest severance offer, and a 2-year non-compete clause. Typical corporate maneuver to get rid of someone quietly without lawsuits. I nodded. Understood. Thank you for the opportunity. Carson blinked, probably expecting outrage, threats, or negotiation. Instead, I stood, shook his hand, and left. Walking the warehouse that afternoon felt strange. 27 years of inspecting inventory, training new hires, fixing problems management never noticed, all condensed into a single cardboard box. I had seen the old CEO, Mr. Hendress, manage the floor from a metal desk in the corner, survive the 2018 warehouse fire, the 2009 recession, and 3 disastrous computer system overhauls. Now Carson, hired 6 months ago from a tech firm in Cincinnati, was executing his efficiency plan, quietly removing the dead weight, as he told HR's Felicia Tran. I packed slowly. The coffee mug my daughter had given me for Father's Day, a small photo of Helen at the company picnic in 2015, stacks of awards and certificates that once meant pride and accomplishment. Tommy Rodriguez, a forklift operator I trained, stopped by. Mr. Abrams, this isn't right. Everyone knows you deserve that bonus. Sometimes plans don't work out, Tommy, I said, patting his shoulder and heading out. Security guard Pete Williams, another long-term employee, avoided my eyes as I handed over my badge and keys. We both knew this was not about performance. This was about money. $94,000. Driving home in the rain, I remembered why I started at Iron Ridge. 33 years old, out of the Army, Helen pregnant with our daughter Jessica, looking for security and health insurance. What was supposed to be a temporary warehouse job became almost 3 decades of dedication. Metal fasteners, hardware supplies, construction clients across the Midwest. Not glamorous, but enough to buy a house, raise a family, and dream of retirement. I worked nights and weekends, learned every detail of operations, helped plan the warehouse expansion, wrote training manuals by hand, taught older employees to use computers, and took pride in being the person who solved problems no one else could. Helen used to tease that I loved the warehouse more than our garage. She wasn't wrong. Carson arrived 6 months ago, bringing modern efficiency from a data-driven tech company. The board hired him after James Mitchell retired. Our first meeting, the so-called strategic alignment, felt like an interrogation. Paper logs, weekly safety meetings, manual processes. Why hadn't we automated everything? I explained. Paper logs don't crash. Weekly safety meetings prevent accidents. Automation is useless if the people fixing it don't understand the machines. He nodded, but had already decided I was an outdated relic. Over the following months, he targeted older employees, first with early retirement offers, then performance improvement plans, finally outright firings. Felicia had warned me weeks ago. Leonard, consider early retirement, she said. Carson's asking about your compensation package. Pride kept me from listening. I assumed my 27 years would protect me. I was wrong. That evening, at Helen's old kitchen table, I stared at the severance offer. $94,000 gone. 11 days. 6 weeks pay, 3 months insurance extension. I pulled out the employee handbook I helped write in 2009, flipping to retirement benefits. There was a clause protecting employees nearing retirement from sudden termination. Carson either didn't know or assumed I wouldn't challenge him. I thought of calling Jessica in Chicago, now a corporate lawyer, but I had brushed off her offers to help months ago. Pride again. Instead, I dialed my nephew, Mitchell Goldstein, a labor attorney. 3 rings, then his voice. Uncle Leonard, what's wrong? I explained everything. He asked for documentation. Hold off on signing, he said. I think Carson made a mistake. And if I'm right, it's going to cost him more than $94,000. I brewed coffee and waited, the first spark of purpose in days. By Tuesday morning, I was on the road to Columbus. Mitchell's office was sharp, modern, intimidating. Carson Vickery screwed up, he said, spreading my documents across the table. Policy 4.7b, Retirement Protection Clause. Anyone within 30 days of retirement bonus couldn't be terminated without cause. Termination under the guise of restructuring during that window was a breach. I helped write this, I said. Mitchell leaned in. You're not signing that severance. Instead, request a formal meeting with HR. If Carson's been targeting older employees, this is federal age discrimination. We spent hours reviewing the details. Mitchell asked about emails, memos, documentation, coworkers affected. He instructed me to gather every record from my work email, every note on Carson's memos, every internal communication regarding restructuring. Driving back to Dayton, I felt a sense of purpose, a plan. Wednesday morning, arriving at Iron Ridge to print emails and clear files, Carson appeared. Thought you left, he said. Just finishing paperwork, I replied. He pulled a revised severance, 12 weeks pay, non-compete intact, signing required by close of business. I thanked him, asked for a few days. His smile tightened. By 5:01 p.m., the original offer was back, but the groundwork was set. Thursday, Mitchell called. Carson had terminated 7 employees within 60 days of retirement bonuses over 8 months. George Murphy, Patricia Walsh, and 5 others. Documents, recordings, witnesses, all lined up. Age discrimination, systematic targeting. Federal violation. Class action potential. This wasn't about my bonus anymore. I drove to George Murphy in Kettering. George, meticulous, careful, built a reputation over 32 years in quality control. Carson wanted fewer gray heads, more fresh thinking. George had recorded the conversation. Smoking gun. 2 hours of discussion, recordings, evidence collection. That evening, I called Mitchell. File everything. Let's end this. Friday morning, I returned to Iron Ridge Components feeling the weight of every year I'd spent there, yet driven by a newfound determination. The rain had cleared, leaving the warehouse smelling of damp metal and concrete, the familiar scent now tinged with tension. I headed straight to the HR office to request the formal meeting Mitchell had advised. Felicia Tran looked up, surprised. Leonard, this is unexpected, she said. I slid the documents across the desk, the yellowed pages and emails forming a clear timeline of Carson's actions. I want a meeting to discuss my termination and the severance terms. I believe there's been a breach of policy. Felicia glanced at the paperwork and then at me. If what you're suggesting is true, this could be serious. I nodded, steady. I'm prepared to pursue it. By mid-morning, the HR conference room was set, Carson sitting behind his glass desk, exuding calm authority, though I noticed a flicker of unease in his eyes as I entered. Leonard, let's discuss this calmly, he said. I sat, laid out the printed emails, memos, and the relevant employee handbook clauses. Carson leaned back, steepling his fingers. I see. You believe the termination is invalid based on retirement protection policy. Exactly, I said. Policy 4.7b clearly states that termination within 30 days of retirement bonus eligibility without cause constitutes a breach. I was 11 days from my bonus. Your restructuring explanation does not satisfy that clause. He frowned, glanced at Felicia, who was flipping through the documents. This is an oversight. I wasn't aware of that policy. I held his gaze. Then we'll see what your legal team has to say. Over the next hour, Felicia recorded the discussion while Carson attempted to justify the timing of my termination. I calmly countered each argument with evidence, dates, and copies of internal communications. It became increasingly clear that Carson's plan was systematic. Identify employees nearing retirement, manufacture a reason, and terminate to save the company money. By noon, the meeting ended without resolution. Carson had no choice but to let HR review everything, while I walked out, holding a sense of quiet victory. That afternoon, I visited Patricia Walsh, one of the others Mitchell had flagged. Her small home was filled with the smell of fresh-baked bread and the quiet hum of a television left on for company. She listened intently as I explained the plan. Her eyes widened at the recordings George and I had collected, her hands shaking slightly as she realized she wasn't alone in this fight. They can't get away with this, she said, her voice a mix of anger and relief. I nodded. They won't. Not this time. By the end of the day, our group included 5 former employees, all within weeks of retirement bonuses, all willing to join the legal action. Mitchell coordinated our communication, creating a detailed log of terminations, severance offers, emails, and recordings. We built a timeline showing Carson's methodical targeting, which became crucial evidence. Monday arrived, and I drove to Columbus again, this time with George Murphy in tow. We met Mitchell, who had drafted the initial Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint. "We're filing today," he said. "The EEOC will investigate, and with the recordings, emails, and policy documentation, this case has a strong foundation." George and I spent the morning reviewing everything once more. Carson's own words, captured on recording, his memos, emails to HR, and the employee handbook all painted a clear picture of age discrimination and wrongful termination. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. We had the evidence, but the legal process would be long and arduous. Filing the complaint was the first step, but the potential outcome meant justice not just for me, but for everyone Carson had wronged. After filing, I returned to Dayton, the familiar sights of home offering some comfort, yet my mind remained on the warehouse, my colleagues, and the years lost to a man more concerned with numbers than people. News of the complaint spread quietly through the company. Employees whispered in the break room, some expressing relief, others fear. Word reached Carson, whose demeanor shifted slightly, though he maintained a veneer of calm authority. I kept communication open with Patricia, George, and the rest, ensuring that everyone's documentation was secure and that no one felt isolated. The week passed slowly, filled with phone calls to Mitchell, coordinating next steps, and reviewing responses from the EEOC. The first contact from the federal agency brought a sense of hope. They had begun reviewing our complaint and requested copies of all supporting evidence. I compiled emails, memos, employment contracts, and our recordings, sending a comprehensive package to the investigators. By the second week, Carson requested a meeting with HR and legal representatives to discuss possible settlement options. It became evident that the EEOC inquiry had unnerved him. He attempted to offer higher severance payments to employees, including me, in exchange for waiving claims. I declined politely but firmly, knowing that accepting would allow him to continue his strategy unchecked. Throughout the process, I reflected on my career and loyalty. The warehouse had been my life, my pride. Every day spent training employees, fixing errors, managing crises, and ensuring safety had contributed to the company's growth. Carson's actions were not just an affront to me personally, but an attack on the very foundation of respect and trust that keeps a workplace alive. We continued collecting testimonies from all affected employees, documenting inconsistencies in Carson's performance reviews, notes on alleged underperformance, and dates correlating terminations with retirement milestones. Each piece reinforced the pattern of discrimination. Mitchell prepared a class action lawsuit to accompany the EEOC complaint, ensuring that the case addressed both the immediate harm to retirees and the systemic nature of the issue. Public pressure remained low at this stage. The plan was to build irrefutable evidence before alerting the media or larger audiences. Weeks later, the EEOC confirmed they would formally investigate. Iron Ridge's legal team scrambled to respond, reviewing internal policies and Carson's actions. For the first time, the power dynamics began to shift. Employees who had felt helpless suddenly realized they had leverage. Our meticulous documentation and George's recording became pivotal, providing undeniable proof that the terminations were deliberate and targeted. I continued to visit colleagues, gather statements, and support those navigating the emotional impact of Carson's tactics. Seeing the relief and gratitude in their faces reminded me why this fight mattered. It was not just about my bonus anymore. It was about accountability, fairness, and preventing future injustices. By the time the EEOC investigation was in full swing, Iron Ridge Components was under intense scrutiny. Investigators requested documents, memos, emails, and employee statements. Each day I spent reviewing files, coordinating with George, Patricia, and the other former employees, ensuring that every detail was precise and accounted for. Carson grew increasingly cautious, holding meetings with legal counsel, HR, and the board. The once confident veneer began to crack as he realized the evidence against him was undeniable. Mitchell advised patience and strategy. "We let them make the first moves," he said. Our goal is not just a payout, it's systemic change. We make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." I nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and satisfaction. Our combined testimonies, policy clauses, and George's recording painted a clear pattern. Employees near retirement were deliberately targeted under the guise of restructuring. One by one, employees who had once been isolated felt empowered to come forward. Their stories added weight to our case, strengthening the claim of systematic age discrimination. Weeks turned into months as the EEOC conducted interviews, analyzed documents, and corroborated accounts. Each call, each meeting, reinforced that we were not fighting alone. The narrative shifted from my personal loss to a collective injustice that demanded accountability. Meanwhile, Carson attempted damage control, offering extended severance packages and confidential settlements to some of the affected employees. We refused, maintaining focus on justice and policy enforcement rather than quick financial resolutions. In January, the EEOC issued a preliminary determination. There was reasonable cause to believe age discrimination had occurred. The report highlighted Carson's pattern of firing employees shortly before retirement milestones, the misrepresentation of restructuring, and the company's failure to follow protective policies outlined in the employee handbook. This was the breakthrough we needed. With EEOC support, Mitchell filed a formal class action lawsuit seeking damages for all affected employees. News of the investigation and lawsuit spread beyond Iron Ridge, catching local media attention. Colleagues, former employees, and the community expressed support, highlighting the importance of standing up against corporate abuse and age discrimination. I reflected on the months of preparation, frustration, and careful documentation that led to this point. What began as a personal fight for my $94,000 retirement bonus had grown into a campaign for justice and accountability, protecting the careers and dignity of others. In court proceedings, the company's lawyers argued restructuring and performance issues as justification, but our evidence, policy clauses, and witness testimonies created an airtight case. Depositions, document requests, and hearings moved forward with relentless precision. During one hearing, George Murphy's testimony and recording were pivotal. His calm, meticulous recounting of events exposed the systematic targeting with clarity. Patricia Walsh and the other employees echoed similar experiences, reinforcing the pattern. Weeks later, a settlement offer arrived from Iron Ridge, including compensation for all affected employees and amendments to company policy ensuring retirement benefits could not be circumvented. We accepted on the condition that the changes be enforceable and that disciplinary measures be taken against those responsible. I finally felt a sense of closure. Walking into the warehouse one last time before returning home, I observed the familiar machinery, the aisles, the office corners where I spent decades solving problems. This place had shaped my life, and though my career there ended in betrayal, the outcome reinforced that dedication, documentation, and courage could challenge injustice. Weeks later, the EEOC released a statement on the investigation, emphasizing the importance of compliance with retirement protection policies and age discrimination laws. Iron Ridge was required to submit regular compliance reports and implement oversight mechanisms. Our fight had tangible results, ensuring future employees would not suffer the same fate. I sat with George, Patricia, and the rest of our group over coffee, reflecting on the journey. We had turned what felt like personal defeat into collective victory. The company recognized the error, our policies were strengthened, and employees regained confidence that fairness could prevail. In the months that followed, I shared my experience with younger employees and community groups, emphasizing the importance of understanding rights, documenting events, and seeking help when facing injustice. The story became a blueprint for others, a cautionary tale of corporate manipulation and a testament to perseverance. In the end, I realized that loyalty and hard work, when paired with vigilance and the courage to act, could challenge even the most calculated corporate schemes. My retirement bonus, though initially stolen, became secondary to the broader lesson. Standing up for what is right is more powerful than any financial reward. Carson Vickery was gone, forced into accountability, and Iron Ridge components emerged with corrected policies and renewed oversight. Years of dedication, years of knowledge, and years of loyalty had been vindicated, not just for me, but for everyone affected. The fight had been long, but the lesson was clear: preparation, evidence, and courage could turn injustice into reform. And finally, I could walk away with my dignity intact, knowing that 30 years of work were honored, not just in dollars, but in principle, justice, and change for the better.